to by David Morgan of themorganreport.com, and today we're going to be having him on the show. So this is going to be really great. I've been doing the Morgan Millennial Minute for about 3 months. Right now, I really enjoy interviewing all these different people and how they've been able to become successful as millennials. So hello, David. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, Alexander, thank you, and I'm glad you're enjoying what you're doing, and I really like the fact that you stepped up to the plate and said you would, and you're doing a great job. I'm really proud of what you're doing, and you're getting a new audience to what your platform, and sponsored by me, and that I want to get the word out to everybody, but I think there's a lot of millennials that are very hungry for, the truth, and honest money is part of the big picture. So, well, what's on your mind here lately?
Well, one thing I thought that I think is pretty interesting, I'm going to share my screen, is this right here. So people right now who are investing in Airbnbs in a lot of different towns, they're starting to ban short-term rentals, Airbnbs, which I think is pretty interesting. They're trying to say that, we can't have Airbnbs because it's going to be hurting, traditional rentals like hotels and other things like that. So I wanted to get your view on what you thought about this and this trend that seems to be happening all across the country.
Well, I'm against it. The reason I'm against it is because in a true free market economy, people should be able to decide for themselves what they're allowed to do. Central planning never really works, or doesn't work very well. The free market works better than any central planner. So this is an edict by people, the hotel industry, let's say, and, they've got to compete. And if they're not, able to compete, then, something will change. So, it's the people's homes or, vacation homes or cabins or, properties that they own, and they have the right to rent them out or not. There's not everybody out there with a second home or even their primary residence that's out there renting it to Airbnb. But there's people that make that choice, and they have the right, in my view, to go ahead and do with it as they please. It's their property. Now, if the rental situation is better than a motel or a hotel or whatever, there'll still be some percentage of people that don't want to be in an Airbnb and they would prefer to be in a hotel. So the market will determine, the outcome. But for a central planner to say, no, you don't have the option, you can't make the decision, we will make the decision for you, goes right along with the entire system that's been changing before our eyes for really decades, but it's really accelerated in the last couple of years, where the state determines, what you see, what you hear, what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to say. And so it's right in line. I'm not surprised, but I'm glad you brought it to our audience's attention. What do you think?
Well, I think it's pretty scary because it seems like they're trampling on property rights. They actually did it in the only small town around where I live, and they're saying people can't have Airbnbs anymore. So just seems pretty crazy. I guess the people who own the hotels hold a lot of sway in different towns and things like that, I suppose. So I wanted to ask you, David, what you think this is going to be doing to the rental market and home prices, because it seems like a lot of people right now are buying vacation homes, second homes, just to rent out as Airbnbs because they're making sometimes 3 times the amount that from traditional rentals. So what do you think this is going to do to the housing market? How will this affect it?
Great question. And, first of all, it's an easy answer on one part of the real estate market, and that's on the commercial side. A lot of commercial real estate has obviously come down and will continue to do so in my studied view, because so many people are working from home and the economy's drying up. In other words, a lot of businesses like restaurants primarily, and there are many others, are not running, commercial space because they can't make a living by having a restaurant business. So that property goes back on the market. Malls are another good example. Office buildings. There's a lot of commercial real estate that's going to see and will continue to see very hard times. On the residential side, that's a really tough one from my perspective, because there's countervailing forces that are very strong. You're bringing one to the fore, Alexander, which is this Airbnb story. But on top of that, the forbearance has just ended, which means that people that didn't pay rent for months now need to pay it. And a lot of people can't. So there'll be a lot of rentals and properties that are once owned that will be back on the market. So I see short term, there could be, and most likely will be a downturn in the real estate market for a while. We've had a huge upturn in real estate prices, people bidding over the asking price all over the place when it's a rural property. You're not seeing that too much in the inner cities, but you are seeing it in almost any quote unquote property in the country. So I think it'll turn around both of them. Commercial, I'm pretty certain about. Residential, it's a little harder to call. But as you point out accurately, if you're buying that second, third, or that subdivision like BlackRock, just buying properties hand over fist and wanting to turn them not back to buyers for ownership as a primary residence, but rather use them as an Airbnb, could be interesting.
Yeah, I have to agree with what you said. So when do you think the housing market will go down, and do you think this trend of banning Airbnb will continue across the United States?
Well, on your second question, where will the ban continue, depends on who's got the fortitude to take it up with the legal system and push it into the courts. I mean, I don't think it can stand under scrutiny if the law is followed, but that's a big if these days. I don't know, how to comment further. I think, yeah, it could. It remains to be determined. I think we're going to see the market real estate wise come down fairly shortly. I'm suspecting that it's going to take place shortly, and that probably be most of the country. We'll find out. I really think, first of all, so many people can't afford homes. The people that are buying these homes in the rural areas come from the inner city and are getting very high prices for their houses currently, and they're able to outbid others in the local area for these rural properties. But that's, I think, coming to an end. So I think it could be fairly soon. It may be short-lived. I'm really not sure how it's going to play out. As I said, you've got some interesting forces going back and forth. You also have some individuals that have a lot of money for one reason or another, and they want out for almost any price, and are willing to pay it. So there is some of that remaining. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so if we see the housing market crash or go down some, how will that affect the gold and silver market?
I think that there's a big opportunity for gold and silver once everything else doesn't do well. I mean, people have referred to it as the everything bubble, but truly it's the everything bubble except precious metals. You've seen even most of the commodities, the agriculture's, lumber has been up. It's come off, of course, but everything is pretty much overvalued with the exception of gold and silver. So if you're a real estate magnate and you own commercial real estate and you continue to see prices come down, at some point, some percentage are going to want to sell. And that puts more, selling pressure on commercial real estate. So as the prices go down even further, that motivates more people. It's sort of like what we call in the futures market or the commodities market running the stop. Selling begets more selling. It's true in almost any market. So on the stock side, that's a tougher call because the Fed is in there now, and I think they've got a put, meaning that they got a certain level that if it hits that, the stock market will be pumped back up by the financial working group on financial markets, better known as the plunge protection team. But real estate will have a big effect. I mean, if you look at somebody as bright and shining star in the space as Mike Maloney, I mean, you look at what Mike did. He went where the puck wasn't. I mean, a lot of us in the sector skated right to the puck because, we wanted the gold and silver investors to buy gold and silver or buy gold and silver mining shares or get in the resource sector or whatever. But Mike skated over to the real estate market. And there were a lot of people in the real estate market that were pretty well off and done well in the real estate market, but didn't understand the monetary system whatsoever. And Mike enlightened them about that. And he's like me, Mike, hope you agree, that he likes to educate people first before they do anything. So he did a great job of educating people. And then at these conferences for real estate investors, he would bring up the monetary question, and then he would go on and talk about gold and silver and the merits of owning some. And I remember in several cases, these people would just flock around his booth and just ask him question after question after question. And Mike has a lot of stamina, and he would stay there for a very long time until he basically answered everybody's question. So that's kind of what I see again, that there'll be people in the real estate market that look, I made all this money, I'm starting to lose some, I can off this, I can discount my real estate a little bit, I'm not going to make, 400,000 on this property now, I'm going to make 350, I'll take it, I think it's coming down more, I'll put that into silver, I'll put that into gold or whatever. So that's what I see. Maybe it's wishful thinking, I'll admit that, it could be, but I doubt it. Once the downturn happens, people look for value. And as I said earlier, the real value is in precious metals right now, and pretty much nothing else.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it seems like almost any other asset, including the dollar in some cases, seems to keep people in debt. And the great thing about gold and silver is that it keeps people out of debt. So do you think it's a good idea and it would be wise for people not to take on any new debts right now? What are your thoughts on that?
They've been pretty consistent. I mean, most people that think we're going into a greater inflation or a hyperinflation think you can pay off your debt with, inflated dollars. That's true if and only if you have wages or an income that will support that. In other words, in the 70s, when I experienced it, almost everybody in a corporate job got a cost of living allowance adjustment to their wages every quarter or so. So you had kind of a wage spiral that kept up with inflation or close to it. That's not true now. So you could see the dollar becoming worth less, and worthless, as I like to say. And yet, you don't have any wage increase. You don't have any income increase. And so that, therefore, having more debt is a bigger and bigger burden for you, even though the dollars are worth less. So I recommend being debt-free if you can. I know that's impossible for most people. So what I like to say is live within your means. And if you have to cut back your lifestyle, consider it. I've talked about this in the past, Alexander, where, a lot of people are working from home if they're lucky enough to have kept their job, or maybe husband and wife are working and now only one or the other is working. So a lot of two-car families, don't really need two cars. Yes, it's nice to have, two cars. It is. But, these times are changing. And it may be worthwhile to consider selling a used car in the hot used car market and maybe paying off debt, especially the high debt, the stuff that's on an interest rate of, 12% with a credit card, or 8 or 9 or whatever it is. So I really think you want to live within your means. If you get your debt down to zero, that's awesome. If you can't, and I understand that, try to get it down on the higher priced debt and then move forward and be prepared. I mean, being prepared mentally is more important than most people think. If you're willing to adjust, adapt, and consider, the possibilities of what's the future could look like, you actually have a much better chance. As you know, Alexander, you've watched a lot of my stuff. I love the expression chance favors the prepared mind. But the way you have a prepared mind is to go through scenarios that are likely and a few that are unlikely as a worst case scenario, and then come back to reality. Well, that's very unlikely it'll be that bad, but it may be where, food is going to continue to cost more, fuel is going to continue to cost more, and the likelihood that we're both going to keep our jobs for the next 10 years may not be all that written in stone.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like we're on a cusp of some big economic storm that is coming with, forbearance and everything else that's going on in the real estate market. There's a lot of really big really big things happening right now. So you basically, what you're saying, it might be a good thing for people to get debt free and have gold and silver, real assets that will still continue to be worth something, unlike the US dollar, which could become worthless in an economic disaster and basically buy up these assets like real estate after the economic storm. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. I mean, I don't see the dollar going to absolute zero, but I think it's, the trend is very obvious. From 1913 till now, the dollar in 1913 was 100 cents. And right now, by the Federal Reserve's own website, it's worth about 2.5 cents. So the trend is clear that the debasement of the currency has taken place over the last 100+ years. I think that trend is continuing now as we see inflation admitted to by even the government entities. Doesn't mean it goes to zero. It does mean that there's going to be some kind of a shakeup, and very likely a new type of currency, a new currency system, a new monetary system, which I've talked about in the past. I don't know the future. I don't even know if the banks know exactly what they want to do. They keep talking about, digital currency, centrally controlled central bank or controlled centralized digital currency that they have control of. But I don't know who's implemented outside of China. China's, well ahead of the Anglo-American empire as far as digital currencies are concerned. So interesting times, as I like to say, but I think that's the trend, and we're going to have a reset before we get to a dollar that's absolutely worthless.
Yeah, I think you're right. So what are some other steps for millennials to take to protect themselves and their wealth during something like this happening?
Well, I think if you're, first of all, try to live your passion. That's easy to say. I've been lucky enough to do that for most of my life. But, if you got a job you don't really care for, still be good at it. Look for the positives in it and look for your passion. I mean, if it's a hobby or whatever, and think about what you can do on the internet that may bring you a little bit of extra income that may turn into another business. I mean, the opportunities on the internet are still available. Yeah, there's more competition, and yeah, there's someone else doing it, but you might be able to do it better. So think of what you want. I mean, something that's a hobby can turn into an income stream. There's a lot of things that are available. It just takes a little bit of jumping in and doing it. You're going to buy every ebook on the topic and read it and do it perfectly. You'll never get it done. You've got to just take the attitude that you're going to get started. It's ready, aim, fire. That's backwards. It's ready, fire, and aim. So you start it, you shoot as a metaphor to starting, and you see what's wrong, and the universe will give you feedback, and then you aim. And your aim might be a little bit off, and the universe will give you more feedback. Say, oh, okay, I see this landing page sucks. I got to ask people what I want them to do. Oh, give me your name and give me an email. That's what I want you to do. Oh, now they know what to do on your landing page. So I could go on and on. I'll leave it at that. But, I want everybody to be happy, joyous, and free. And, it's, freedom is moving away. Happiness, it's kind of what you make it. But in hard times, it's not as easy to come by, perhaps. And being joyous is awesome as well. But we're not in that state for the most part. I'm speaking for others. I don't mean to, but this is the way I see the world. I like to speak my mind. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the last one, freedom. When people are free to make their choices, buy what they want, go where they want, see who they want, and say what they want. Now you've got a life worth living. If you are curtailed from who you see, when you see them, how you see them, and what you say, you've lost a lot.
You're definitely right, David. I think it's time for the American people to take back their freedoms, return to sound money, real money. And you're definitely right on that. And I'd like to ask you, could you tell the viewers a little bit about the Morgan Report?
Sure. It's the main landing page is themorganreport.com. And as I just said, just give me a first name and an email address, verify it. You'll be on our free list, and I give out a weekly podcast and interviews like this I post as well. Sometimes there's a dealer, a coin dealer, bullion dealer will give an advantage to people on that list. I do tell you about stocks from time to time. Of course, we have to disclose whether I own them or not. And I'd say that's it. Get on the free list. It's a good way to not miss anything. I try to keep my podcast down to about 15 minutes. When I do the weekly wrap up, I call it the weekly perspective, because I usually read something in the news that I think is extremely important, like you just brought up with the Airbnb, and then I make a comment on it and move on to another important story.
Well, that sounds great. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about your book that you wrote?
Sure, I've written 3. One's called Get the Skinny on Silver Investing. Then Chris Marchese and I wrote the Silver Manifesto. And David Smith and I wrote Second Chance, How to Make and Keep Big Money During the Coming Gold and Silver Shockwave. They all deal with precious metals. Obviously, the first one's a primer on silver, and it's been out of print forever. There's a lot of typos. When I Vanity published, meaning I paid a publisher to print it for me, they were supposed to edit it, and they didn't. It was in the price, but it didn't get done. The second book was pretty well done. I paid quite a bit to get it edited properly. And it's an overview of the silver market from all aspects. It's not all about silver. I mean, it talks about the history of silver, but it talks about banking, fractional reserve banking, fractional reserve bullion banking, how the silver market is manipulated, how it's beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is. Talks about mining companies, how we pick a mining stock. And then in the last chapter, I wrote Beyond Silver, because I questioned the whole monetary system, the whole idea of money. Tell people in that last chapter, I don't have all the answers, and I don't even have I wish I had the solutions. I don't. Here's a few people I admire that are thinking about a solution. So there's that. And then on Second Chance, it's kind of, I've gotten complimented on it. And David Smith deserves a lot of credit for that book. And it's a lot of exit strategies on how you exit a market without trying to get the last penny profit out of it, but still take the lion's share of the profit. And how you think ahead of the market in order to obtain basically what you want, and how to manage risk. There's a lot in that book, and people that have read it have, not all of them, but if you look at the feedback at the Morgan Report, and you pull down the books page, you can see what the comments have been on the last 2 books, Silver Manifesto and Second Chance. And a lot of people that have read it really like it. I've been on a couple of radio shows, and one, if not 2, said, "Gosh, this is amazing. You guys really did a great job." So, I'm not trying to pump it up. I'm really not. I'm just saying that a lot of investors could get some value out of that book.
Yeah, I agree. Those books are very good. Could you tell the viewers how they can contact you?
Yeah, the easiest way to contact me is really through you, Alexander, because I shut off the comments on almost all of my videos. But you keep them open, you read them. It's geared toward the millennials, but it's open for anybody. So if you wanted to reach out and interview Alexander, interview me, or you have a comment that you want, Alexander to push forward, send to me. You put it in the comments section under any of his interviews, and I'm sure he'll get them over to me.
Well, that sounds great, David, and I would like to thank you for being on the show and doing this. And yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And thank you to all the viewers who are watching. God bless.
God bless.